you imagine if I just went back on what he said and went, have a round of applause for Dan? Would you guys feel weird about that? Or they definitely used up all their energy, Dan. Thanks for that. There's some jokes. So I went to my physiotherapist recently, and she told me a certain body part of mine was underdeveloped. Before you think anything weird, it was my thumbs she was talking about. Really? It's quite an emasculating thing to be told by a medical professional that you have flabby thumbs. Like, I told one of my comedian friends about this, and he looked at me and he went, Taylor, if there was one muscle on your body that I would expect to be underdeveloped, it's not your thumbs. And I was kind of shattered. I said, well, Doc, this is horrible. How am I going to tell someone about a movie I really enjoyed without using the phrase 2 thumbs up? Thumbs are the only things that separate us from the beasts, apparently. You're probably thinking to yourself now, like, oh, there's got to be more than just thumbs, right? But then you go on like a night out to the strip and you're like, no, pretty much just is the thumbs. Paper thin boundary, isn't it? And so my physiotherapist said, don't worry, we can, it's not the end for your thumbs, we can gradually build up the strength through some rehabilitative exercises. So first of all, I'm going to need you to double your Xbox regime immediately. Then, I want you to only greet people using a shaka wherever possible. And I need you to start hitchhiking to work. Whatever you do, do not let anyone challenge you to a thumb war, because that will be the end of you. So I went through this program for several weeks, and my thumb's recovered, you know, it's a full recovery. And she was checking out my hand another time, and she went, could you just wiggle your pinky for me? So I wiggled my pinky, and she didn't say anything, she just went, I said, Doc, please tell me I don't have underdeveloped pinkies as well. And all she said was, I'm going to need you to start drinking a lot of cups of tea and making a lot of promises to people. So I'll keep you posted on that one because that's ongoing. I want to tell you guys about this pair of shorts I bought recently. I bought them in the size 5XL. 5XL shorts. And the most insulting thing about them is the brand name is Active Intent. You see the problem there, right? That's a terrible name for those shorts. Active Intent. I don't even have a little bit of active intent. Do you know, actually that's not true. I have the intent, I have all the intent in the world. I just never do it. Yeah. I was trying to get a job as a lifeguard a few years ago. And the guy interviewing me said, Taylor, are you confident in the water? And I went, no. He said, what do you mean? And I said, well, I swim wearing a t-shirt, so. That's confident in the water. Well, that's a weird question, isn't it, for a job interview? Confident in the water. I don't even feel confident on land, to be honest with you. And like, what does confidence have to do with swimming at all? Like, you don't get points for trying with swimming. It's a pretty binary activity. If you stop swimming, you just start drowning. You start an entirely whole nother activity. Maybe calling drowning an activity is a weird thing. You know what I mean? And like, no one's ever been looking out over the ocean and just been like, oh man, I think Keith's drowning out there. He looks good though, doesn't he? So confident. He's really owning that. He's really making that his own. Oh, he's even doing the Terminator thumbs up as he goes down into the fire. That's pure quality, that is. This is becoming a dated reference, but did anybody used to watch that show Love Island on the TV? No. Okay, well, I'm still going to do the jokes. Strap in. I auditioned to be on Love Island a few years ago, and the producers said to me, Taylor, we really like you. We think you'd be more suited towards a show like Love You Like a Brother Island. Or I Love How We're Such Good Friends Island. Or Thanks for Helping Me Move House. And I know I said we were going to watch movies and get pizza afterwards, but Derek has just changed his mind and he's texted me and he's going to come over after all. Even though he said he was busy when I asked him if he could come to the house earlier today. So can you just clear off and I'll give you $20 and you get pizza on the way home? Island. Obviously not a real story there. It's just made up, isn't it? Comedy. It's rough out there. A lot of comedians do those jokes where they say they look like a celebrity. I don't really think I have a celebrity that I'm a dead ringer for, but I do think I look like the two actors from 21 Jump Street put together. Like, you know, from like here till about here. I mean, that's Channing Tatum all day, right? The rest of me, however, is, oh geez, what was the other actor from the movie called? No. Ice Cube. I've learned that there's a bit of a demographic split with that joke. So if you were thinking of Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum, I'm sorry about the housing economy. I hope you'll be able to afford a down payment someday. If you were picturing Johnny Depp and the other guy from that, sorry about the back pain. I hope it comes. And some of you might be learning that Johnny Depp was in a TV show called 21 Jump Street now. Yeah. I don't think it's very good. I never watched it. I had an interesting compliment from a friend of mine kind of recently. He said to me, you know, Taylor, for how you look, you smell surprisingly good. Right? It kind of puts you on the back foot a bit again. That's what says that's here, doesn't it? You kind of, I wasn't really sure how to respond to that. It's kind of like, you know those situations where somebody, you can tell that they don't want to give you an insult or hurt your feelings, so they try to give you a compliment instead, and it just kind of hurts more. Like this one time I was talking to a woman from the crowd after a comedy show, and I asked her if she'd enjoyed the show, and I think she didn't want to give me an insult, she didn't want to hurt my feelings, so she tried to give me a compliment, bless her for it, and she just went, "Comedy's hard, isn't it?" It's like, yes, apparently so. I'm quite sweaty. You guys probably see how the lights are. I'm sweating quite heavily. This is nothing to do with the show. It's just kind of how I am in general. It's kind of gross. It's kind of annoying. But there's actually some sort of unknown economical benefits to being sweaty. I'll give you an example. Like I can turn any slide into a water slide. I can show up as late as I want to any appointment because they look at me and they go, "Oh, he must have rushed to get here." Take it easy on me. And I went to yoga kind of recently, and when you sign in, there's two options for what there's normal yoga and then there's hot yoga. And the hot yoga costs $12 more than the normal yoga. And I said, "What's the difference between the two?" And they said, "Oh, well, the hot yoga, the room is really hot, so you'll start to really sweat." And I'll take the normal yoga ticket, thank you. Went in, I'm working up a proper style, and I got kicked out because I just spent the whole class looking over at the hot yoga room going, "That's $12 you'll never get back." It's about small victories in life, isn't it, really? Yeah. I suppose I should tell you a little bit about where I'm from. Actually, I've got one more joke that I want to tell you before that. I've messed up the order, sorry. I don't want to brag to you guys or anything, but I used to read a lot of books when I was a child. I mean, it's fair, it's not really something you should brag about. It hasn't come in as useful as I thought it was going to, because all it's really done is it's turned me into an adult with an unnecessarily large vocabulary. And like, you know, it does help to know the difference between Pacific and specific. But I've never had like a life or death situation where I had to explain some of the difference between affluent and effluent. Did you guys laugh because you know what those two words are? Well, just in case you did, because it's part of the joke, I didn't know if the crowd was going to get it or not. Affluent means you have a lot of money, and effluent means you are raw sewage. Maybe not so different, really, now that I think about it. Rich people, sewage, affluent, effluent, potato, tomato, you know how it is. But what happens is, whenever I have to spell things out over the phone, when you call up the airport and you have to spell things out, what happens is, they'll ask me to spell my name out for them, and I panic, and I forget every single short word that I know that starts with all the letters that I need. You want to say like A for apple, B for banana, or whatever. But what happens is when I have to spell out Taylor, it's like, yeah, it's T for tracheotomy, A for ampersand, Y for Yggdrasil. Yeah, it's the Norse tree of life. Around it reside the 7 realms of which we live in. It is kind of interesting, isn't it? Are you sure? It's Y for yammering, G for gratuitous, G for gentrification. Gentrification, yeah. It's the process in which the character of an area is changed due to a sudden influx of affluent businesses and residents. No, you're thinking of effluent. Yes, I'm sure. I read a lot of books when I was a child. It takes a long time for me to book things on the plane, is what I'm trying to say. So now I'll tell you a little bit about where I'm from. So I'm from a little city, that's a reach. I'm from a village called Dunsandel. Has anybody heard of this before? That was quite a derisory laugh there, I'm not going to lie. Are you from Dunsandel as well?
No, I'm from a place called Albury. It's tiny.
It's that same thing. So I've got to give you an idea of how small Dunsandel. What's that?
It's on State Highway 1, isn't it?
Yeah, you've driven through it. I'm sure you probably didn't realise it was. Yeah, you probably didn't realise there was a city there, but you've definitely been through it. And yeah, sorry, I keep using the word city very gratuitously there. We'll call it a hamlet from now on, because that sounds kind of nice and it is classy comedy. I'll take the laugh. It's Dunsandel. So, I return there every now and then, just to catch up with old friends and stuff. And one of the last times I visited, we were having a soiree, if you will, which was a fire on the ground and a bunch of people sitting around it, listening to Disturbed. And I noticed there were 2 guys that had their arms in a sling. And I kind of said, what's all that about? I assumed it was a rugby accident or something. But they said, no, we had an interesting incident a couple of weeks ago. And I said, what happened? And they started off the story with one of my favourite start-offs to any stories. They said, at the time, it seemed like a good idea. Which is just, a banger of a story is coming when they say that. And I said, so what happened? And they said, well, what we wanted to do was we wanted to try a drive-by high five. I don't know if more needs to be explained. One man stood on the side of the road like this, and another guy drove his Skyline GTR up the other side, drove along, and their hands connected and broke or dislocated both of their elbows. And so I heard the story, and I said, what part of that seemed like a good idea at the time? And this is 100% true. They said to me, we thought it would be a really loud noise. And they were right. It just wasn't a noise they thought it was going to be. It was bones breaking and it was screaming. So that's where I grew up, really. But I lived I was going to say a little country called Japan, but I lived in, you've heard of it before, presumably. I moved to Japan a few years ago. I got to get away from New Zealand for a little bit, so I'm going to tell you a few stories about that. The first, whenever I check, the first night, you have to check into a hotel, get from the airport. And I always find this process kind of challenging, because I find the guy behind the counter makes a lot of judgments about me, based on the way, just based on what information he presents me with when I check in. Like, without me even asking, every single time I check into a hotel, the guy just gives me the Wi-Fi password, like, you ever needing that? And then, this one that I checked into in Japan, the guy, his heart was in the right place. He was trying to do a helpful thing for me. He took the pamphlet of the hotel information and he started modifying it. He was off the bat. He crossed out all the fitness centre information. Don't worry about that, buddy. He made up for it because he circled the buffet hours. So that's really nice. And so when I was there, I did a comedy show that I named Ruddzilla. And a lot of people asked me why I decided to call the show. Did anybody see the show when it was cool? Just move right on. So people asked me why I called the show Ruddzilla. And a lot of people think it's a reference to Dennis Rodman from the Chicago Bulls. It wasn't. It was a reference to Godzilla, the monster. You're all familiar with him, I presume. And the reason I called it Godzilla is because those movies are filled with it's not necessarily symbolism, but I connect to Godzilla in those movies a lot. I feel a kinship with him when I watch them. And the reason is, I think me and Godzilla would have had a lot of the same thoughts when we first arrived in Japan. He's not from Japan, he's from the ocean. And we would have been having these same thoughts. It would have been things like, wow, everybody's really tiny around here. We would have been thinking things like, nobody can understand what I'm saying to them, no matter how hard I try. And we both kept stepping on small children. And I think it was like when Godzilla sees another monster, he goes over and fights the other monster. And I really related to this because what would happen is I would see another foreigner in Japan that was like acting up. There was a weird time where foreigners would come over and be like screaming in the streets and yelling Pikachu and stuff like that. And it made us all look bad. So I think that's what Godzilla's really doing when he sees another monster knocking stuff over and eating people. He's like, they're going to think we're all like this, you know? So he goes over and he kills the monster. So that's what I basically did every time I saw another foreigner, was try to get into a fist fight with them. All right, that was not funny. We're just going to move straight on there. What the hell's my next joke? I've completely lost my train of thought from that. Do you know what it was? I did a Halloween celebration one year. And you guys like Halloween? Yeah. I find it very difficult because my costumes never come out how I planned. This one year I was living in Japan. If you want to go see weird stuff in Japan, go during Halloween because it just goes crazy. The whole town like celebrates. And I thought it would be cool, given that I was in the country, to go as a character called Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z. A few people kind of know who this character is. You're shaking your head at me. So if you don't know who the character is, he's a muscular, tall, green alien, and he's got weird ears and a bald cap. So I was dressed as this, and I was walking to this Halloween party that I've been invited to, and these two children came running up to me, and one of them starts telling me that they're a big fan of my movies, they like my work, everything, and they wanted me to take a photo with them. And I thought, that's cool. So we do like little, pose, take a photo. And then as the children run off, one of them shouts over his shoulder back at me, "Thanks for the photo, Shrek!" Yeah. So if anybody's looking to hire someone for a children's birthday party or something like that, I did a pretty good Shrek. That was an interesting night. I saw something pretty crazy. I saw these two foreigners. They were standing in the middle of the street. They were dressed as Minnie Mouse and Mickey Mouse, and they were having a fist fight. And I kind of thought, should I break this up? I mean, they are my parents after all. But then I thought, you know what? It's their holiday too. And they didn't complain when I make them go to Disney World, so they can see this holiday. And this night got kind of weird because we went to a noodle house, and this very old, very drunk Japanese lady decided she wanted to feed me ramen with chopsticks. And she was very drunk. And I don't know if you've ever seen a drunk Japanese person using chopsticks before. It looks a lot like a sober white person using chopsticks. And when I was there, I'd be using chopsticks, and Japanese people would say to me, they'd say, "Ohashi jozu desu ne," which means, "You're good with chopsticks, aren't you?" And I always found it really patronizing. I thought it was like, look at white man using the sticks to eat. I thought they were kind of like taking the mickey a little bit. And I used to get really annoyed at them. But then what's happened is, since I've come back to New Zealand, a lot of white people have started telling me that I'm good at using chopsticks. So I feel kind of bad for getting angry at those people over there, because apparently I'm just like the Edward Scissorhands of chopsticks. I've even added that to my CV under my list of skills. I just wrote, good at using chopsticks, brackets, even wrote this using them. Hope to hear back from you soon. Ruddzilla. That'd be really unprofessional if I use that. I just want to check, I just want to make sure I haven't missed the joke. No, I haven't, we're good, we're on time. So, the other thing people used to ask me is, did you ever experience any racism over there? And I gotta say, I honestly didn't. One time I had an old Japanese man shout from across the street at me, "Go home!" But as an introvert, that was like exactly what I want to hear from people. Like, I was just like, I'm right there with you, buddy, but I gotta go to work. I've even got the latest Final Fantasy at home. That would be much better. I did have this interesting experience. Like, does everybody know what a yukata is? Yeah. If you picture like a samurai, that basically that's their clothing, and it looks very similar to that. It's like a robe and stuff. And we had this. There was a festival we were walking at. I had this weird experience where I was dressed up in one of these. Like, the whole cultural appropriation thing is weird because nothing makes Japanese people happier than seeing like a big fat white boy like me dressed up in traditional Japanese clothing. They love it. And I had my hair at the time. It was up in a like a top knot because it was really hot, and I had longer hair at the time because I just accepted my fate that I couldn't speak enough Japanese to go to the hairdresser. Like I never thought to just bring a picture in and point to it. I just kind of thought, well, this is me now. I'm just going to be like cousin Pit by the time I leave this place. And what had happened was there's this superstition over there that if a sumo wrestler holds your baby, they'll grow up big and strong. It's like good, like you can see where this is going, right? See. So I noticed this couple walking over to me and they're holding the baby, and he kind of holds the baby out to me. And I'd heard about this tradition. And I tried to explain to him that I wasn't a sumo wrestler, and he kind of just looked at the baby and then he looked at me and he sort of went like, "Can you just do it anyway?" Like, he's not going to know the difference, he's too young, he's a baby, what's he going to know? So this guy just hands me his baby, and I don't know if you've ever been in this situation before, but like, how do you bless a baby? They're pretty clear about they don't like being shaken, so I figured that wasn't it's not going to be that. I didn't really want to tip it upside down or anything like that, so I sort of just cheersed it like I was holding like a big mug of mulled wine. And this seemed to appease the guy, and he took the baby back and he said thank you very much, and he walked off. And then what had happened in the meantime is I realised that there was a few more couples closing in. And so there's this thing in Japanese culture where if a restaurant has a line outside, people, they say that's got to be a really good, the quality of that place must be amazing because it's so popular that people are lining up outside to go there. And so what had happened was I noticed a queue starting to form of just all these hopeful couples wanting a big strong baby that were lining up. And I just didn't really know what to do because I've set the precedent, I did the first one, and so I just kind of continued on. I was just saying, "Oh, the baby, there you go," and send it. And then what happened was there was just a guy, he was just like wearing a suit, just a normal dude, and he kind of just walked up and was just like, "What's this the line for?" And I said, "Oh, I'm blessing babies." "What did you think this was the line for?" And he just said, "Oh, I just saw the line and thought it would be for something good, so here we are." And I said, "Well, would you like me to bless you?" And he just went, yeah, okay. So I just really slowly just picked him up, kind of go, put him down, and I sent him on his way again. And by this point, the line was getting pretty ridiculous. So a police officer came over to see what on earth is going on. And put it this way, I learned something that day that what I was doing was not necessarily illegal, but it was very highly frowned upon. I got a very stern warning from the Japanese police for the unauthorized blessing of 23 babies and 1 accountant. They didn't really care about the accountant, that's just 2 consenting adults, really. It's a lot weirder when I put it that way, isn't it? And so one other thing I did when I was there was we took this test called the JLPT, which is the Japanese Language Proficiency Test. And if you're familiar with the Japanese alphabet, it comes in 3 segments. There's the hiragana and the katakana, which are kind of letters, they look like letters kind of. And then there's the kanji, which are the Chinese characters that one character means a whole word. You've probably seen these before, tattooed on the skin of white people. Just a slow nod there. And a lot of foreigners that I met really hated the fact that you had to learn kanji for the JLPT. I mean, it's a part of the language, so you got to do it. And they'd have this really haughty attitude about it, like, oh, I could pass that JLPT if it wasn't for the kanji section. And it's kind of like, well, you couldn't pass the test then if you can't pass one of the 3 parts of the test, right? Can you imagine if your anesthesiologist was just like, I could be a proper anesthesiologist if people didn't have to wake up on the other side of it. Putting people to sleep, that's the easy part. But making them wake up afterwards, that's what am I, a magician or something? Who does that? No one does that. I'll tell you this another thing, I actually did forget one joke, I'll tell you that now, it's not really relevant, but I'm a little bit worried of being kidnapped. I know that's kind of a weird thing in someone of my build and size. Yeah, like you're kind of wondering about the reason is because it would be weeks, I'd go missing and it would be weeks before anybody kind of knew anything was up. Like, if you ever watch those shows, like the crime watch shows, the police officer talks to the mother or whatever, and they always ask this question of, is this behaviour out of character for the person who's gone missing? So my mother would be on the phone and she'd be saying, oh yes, well he hasn't come around to visit us. None of his friends say they've seen him. The neighbours say they haven't seen him coming or going from the house. And the police officer would say, is this behaviour out of character for Mr. Ruddle? And my mother would say, you know what, sorry to bother you. And she'd be saying, meanwhile, I'm just tied to a chair in a basement, like. They're not getting me back from that one. But do you know what I'm actually worried about? I'm actually more worried about being framed for murder because I would never have an alibi. It would just be like an open and shut case. They say like, oh, Mr. Ruddle, where were you last Saturday at 8 o'clock? And I would say, I was at home by myself. I say, did you meet with any friends or did you see anybody that could corroborate this alibi of yours? And I would go, no. And they would say, what were you doing at home by yourself? And I said, I was just using the computer, watching TV and stuff. And they would say, oh, well, you know what? We can just check your internet history and we can verify when you were home and when you were using the computer. And I would be like, you know what? I think I'm just going to take the murder route. It's not that there's anything dodgy in there. It's just, it would be a bunch of really embarrassing questions. It would be things like how to be funny. And the difference between affluent and affluent. And it would also be me Googling myself to see how famous I am. And like I tell you this, if you've ever tried to be a performer or something, you can tell how well someone's career is going by how specific you have to be on the Google. So the rest of mine would be Taylor Ruddle comedian, Taylor Ruddle comedian in Christchurch, New Zealand, and then you might get my Facebook page or something like that. Yeah, anyways. What was it saying? New Zealand stuff again. So did the Japan stuff, I think it was all of it. So there was one more Japan story. I went to the doctor once and I learned something about the language. Does anybody speak Japanese in tonight? So like, they use these, you're all familiar with Pikachu, right? So his name comes from onomatopoeia, which is pika pika, which means sparkling. And these double words are really common in the Japanese language. So like doki doki is excitement, or waka waka is another one for excitement. They use them a lot and they come up a lot. And I never it always felt like baby talk to me, and I never expect them to come up in a doctor's appointment. So like what happened was I went in with a headache, and I told the doctor, I said, "Atamagitai," which means my head hurts. And then he was like, "What kind of pain is in your head?" And I was like, I've never had a doctor ask me that before. I didn't really realise there were different types of headache pain. And I said, what are some examples? And he said, well, it can be gun itai, which means like a pounding kind of headache, it's the sound of a drum. Or it can be hiri itai, which is like pins and needles and like a numb kind of thing. And I said, oh, it was gun itai, whatever. But it just felt like, imagine if you went to the doctor here and the guy was like, hey, Mr. Ruddle, take a seat. Now why don't you tell me about your boo-boo that you've got there? And I was like, my knee hurts. And he goes, would you say it's more of an ouchie-wouchie? Or a hurty-wurty? And I'm like, ouchie-wouchie. And he goes, not good. You wait here. I'm going to go have a word on the ring. And I'm going to get you a wee. You know, you saw where I was going with it about 3 towards 90. We get it, noise. Yeah. I apologize. But you ever heard this phrase? This is a phrase when I was a little kid. Was an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And I feel that's a really weird way to phrase it, like keeps the doctor away. Like they're vampires or something like that. It's like, is it just this horde of doctors all beating our doors down to give us medical attention, and the only possible way we can keep them off is by just consuming apples? It's a really bleak picture, but it also kind of makes me think maybe the healthcare system was a lot better back then if there was just this surplus of doctors around waiting to see you. Like, especially now, has anybody show me a hand if you've tried to book a doctor's appointment kind of recently. I don't know if your experience was the same as mine, but my doctor said, yes, we can see you in 8 weeks. And then you get a text in 8 weeks that just says, hey, you dead, LOL? And my doctor is he's this old school, very old battler, and to this doctor, every single health ailment that I have is because I'm overweight. Like, I mean, to be fair, if I go in with a knee boo-boo, yes, fair enough, a lot of weight on the knee. But I went in with a cold once and he was like, so what happens here is, because your body is so large, the virus sees you as like a very nice, large house and it really wants to go inside you. So if you lost some weight, you'd be less appealing to the virus. And then I went in for a broken leg after getting hit by a car once, and he's like, oh, shouldn't have been so fat, you could have jumped out of the way. Brutal, eh? He's one of those fellas that, like, you're not sure if he'll die or get cancelled first. It's like, you know, some of the stuff he says is a bit, okay. I'll tell you something. So I was at one of those little farmers markets somewhat recently, and there was a woman offering free samples of something on a small wooden spoon, and she said, do you want to try some honey? I said, oh, no thanks, I'm not a big fan of honey. And she said this interesting phrase. She went, no, it's okay. This is cruelty-free honey. And is this anyone's first time hearing cruelty-free honey before? Yeah, the first time I heard it, I was like, hang on a second, you're going to catch me up here. What do you mean cruelty-free honey? Is this special? Is this a rare type of honey? She said, oh yeah, there's not many like this. I said, so wait a second, you're telling me that every single jar of honey we've ever enjoyed up until this new development has been cruelty honey? And she was like, yeah, pretty much. And I was like, oh, that's not good. And then I started thinking, like, how do we even get honey out of bees? Like, what have we been doing to these bees this whole time that could be constituted as cruelty? Like, are we calling them mean names? Are we punching the honey out of them or something? Like, what's going on there? And how do we figure out this new, like, to be honest with you, I kind of just thought that the bees just gave us the honey. Like, they were making it and they put it there and we walked up to the hive and we were just like, hello, can we please have some honey? And they were like, sure, we don't need it, you can just, we're up to our eyeballs and this stuff, take as much as you want. And it was like, you know, they're paying rent or something like that. Like, you've given us this nice square box to live in, have our payment. And so I'm pontificating about this, and she kind of interrupts me, and she's like, are you going to try the honey or not? Fair enough. So I did try the honey. And I got to tell you guys, it was disgusting. Felt like something was missing, if you know what I mean. It was okay, but you know, that last little 2% was apparently the cruelty of bees. It just needed that. And then it was weird because I kept walking, and the next guy next to me held out a little spoon as well, and he was like, "Do you want to try some honey with extra cruelty?" And I asked him what the difference was between like normal, you know, cruelty and like cruelty plus honey. And he said, it's kind of the same as normal honey, except there's a dead bee in every jar. Well, he's alive when he goes in. Yeah, they got quite dark, I apologise about that. We'll go a little bit lighter. Dogs, anything like dogs? I've been dog sitting kind of recently, and I've had to experience the dog park for the first time. And for me, as an introvert, it's quite an uncomfortable place to be. Because you just walk to the dog park with your dog, and then you find another person that you don't know that has a dog, and then your dogs kind of just start fighting in front of you, and you're just having to talk to this other person. Like imagine if going to the regular park was like that. You're just walking along minding your own business, and then some guy you don't know just comes running over to you, and without saying a single word, he just goes, and you're like, oh yeah, that's good. And then you just like wrestle each other for 20 minutes. And then without saying another word, he just runs off and goes and jumps in a pond or something. What dogs do. And so this dog is playing with another person's dog. And this guy's asking me questions about the dog that I don't really have the answers to because I don't know the dog that well. And he's like, yeah, what's your dog's name? And I'm like, I think it's Max. And he goes, what kind of dog is Max? I went, brown. And he goes, does Max have a favourite food? I was like, what do you ask Max this question? How am I supposed to think? I've seen him eat his actual food and then like poop with the same veracity. I really don't know if he's got a favourite out of anything in there. And there's this awkward pause, and the guy is like kind of looking expectantly at me. And he goes, aren't you going to ask me some questions about my dog? I went, nah, I'm not going to do anything with that information. I think I'm alright, thanks. And he looked really sad, like he looked like that was probably the highlight of his day. And I didn't really know what to do. We were just kind of standing there, and so I just went like, alright. We just wrestled, and it was a bit of fun. I'll tell you this little story. So I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a fan of snacking. It's not supposed to get such a big laugh I'm a big fan of snacking, and I like to, it's a bad habit of mine I know, but I like to buy snacks really late at night. So I go to the supermarket. It's tough, right? You feel terrible as you're doing it, and I always feel like the person behind the counter is judging me for my poor life decisions, especially if it's not like a self-checkout. You just have to kind of take it. But I discovered what you can do is, if you're a guy, this might not help you, but you should give it a try, see how it goes. What you do is you buy all the stuff you're going to buy, the chockies, the ice creams, the whatever, the chips. And then on top of that, you put a bunch of flowers and a box of Tampax. And then you look at the counter person like, and they go from judging you to like, you're a great boyfriend. The only problem is, what happens is, I had this one time where there was a fellow that was sleeping rough who, have you ever walked out of the supermarket and there's someone that asks you for money and you've got 2 full bags of groceries and you try to tell them you don't have any money? This guy tried to call my bluff, I guess, and he just started following me. He was going to prove me wrong. I guess he didn't believe that I didn't have any money. And he was going to, you never want someone to know where you actually live, so I'm trying to take turns and stuff like that, not to lead him to my house. And eventually I just caved and I said, look, what is it going to take to get rid of you? And he goes, what you got there? And he's looking in my bag, and then the weird thing about it is he's kind of criticizing my choices, and he's like, oh, you gotta start taking better care of yourself. What is this, ice cream, chips? Is there a box of Tampax in there? And but what happened was, so I've been doing this. I moved to a smaller part of town, and the problem with this trick is if it's the same person each time, they start to recognise you. And I moved to a smaller place that doesn't have self-checkouts, and it's always the same one guy working behind the counter each time. And you know, you do it a few times, and he's like, "Oh, you're a great guy. You're really a caring boyfriend." And he starts recommending me better brands of tampons and stuff. Like, "Oh, I got a teenage daughter. Try this. That's better." And he starts asking me questions like about my girlfriend, and I've done this a lot enough that I feel awkward correcting him. So I just made up a girlfriend. I said, "Oh, she's really tall. She's got long blonde hair. She's a doctor. She jogs." And I just invented this whole person. And he kind of gave me really good relationship advice. And I guess he was quite invested in this. And then one time, you know those bricks, they give out the little bricks and stuff. I was claiming a bunch of those at the checkout, and he gave me this look like, "Have you two got a little one on the way?" And I went, "Yes. That is why I want these toys, because we have a small child on the way." And he looks at me and he goes, "I'd recognise that scared look of a first-time father anywhere." And then he starts giving me really solid parenting advice. Things like, you know, you can spend as much money as you want on them in the world, but the one thing you can't buy with money is time. So that's the important thing. Enjoy the time that they're little while you can, because it goes quicker than you think. And he's just giving me this like really solid advice. But he also started asking me things like, what school am I going to send them to? And I had no answer for this, so I found myself staying up late at night, like researching schools in the area. This one's got a good after-school program. This one fits my lifestyle a little better. The drive's a little bit easier to this. So this is going on for many months at a time. And then I made a terrible mistake because I got a real girlfriend and brought her into the store with me one time. And he saw me from across the store and he kind of just went. And like, what happened was, he didn't say anything that time, so solid guy, you know. But the next time I came in, he was like, "What the heck is wrong with you? You have a beautiful wife and child. And you're going to hang out with this ugly home wrecker?" And I'm trying to, oh, you know, it's not what it seems like. I'm trying to talk my way out of it, and he's just really ripping into it. It's like my actual girlfriend. And I said, "Look, I thought, okay, I'll just bite the bullet and come clean." And so I said, "Look, I got to come clean with you. We actually got a divorce a few months ago. Unfortunately, she got sole custody of the child, and they have moved to Gore." And I was hoping that would be the end of it, but he goes, "Nah, you need to move to Gore." He said, my father left when I was a child, and it took a piece of me with him, you know. I never quite grew up the same. He's getting really deep with me now. He says, "It's important for you to be in this child's life. You can't be hanging around with women like that. It'll ruin your life. You got to focus on what's important. You got to fight for what's important. So you need to sell your house. You need to move to Gore." And so I went, "Oh yeah, okay. I'll completely come clean with you now." And she died. No, I said, "Look, this whole time I've been misleading you. There never was a family. I just felt judged by buying, you know, I can't claim, I told him the whole story. And I thought he would be really angry, but he just laughed and he said, "Oh yeah, I know, I played bowls with your granddad. He told me everything." And he said, "Why would you not just like come clean with me at the time? Why wouldn't you tell me off the bat?" And all I could really think to say was, "Seemed like a good idea at the time." I think pretty much, what am I doing for time? That's like my set.
46, 47?
Damn, straight up, almost bang on 45 minutes. Well done, me. Well, I really appreciate you coming out. I promise this was not just some weird, like, pretty much most of the audience tonight. I think you're the only two that I don't really know. I promise this wasn't just some like way to get you to hang out with me for a couple of hours. But you know what? Christmas in the park, a bunch of people had tickets and they didn't turn up, so their loss, I suppose. I really appreciate. Hey?
It's not a ticketed event.
I think it's here.
Oh, for here.
Yeah. Interesting. Free, yeah. I just want to say I do appreciate you coming out. I hope that it hasn't stopped you from enjoying Christmas in the park. I hope you had a good time. Can we have a round of applause for the acts who started out? That's about it for me. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys have a good rest of the weekend. Thank you very much.